Thank you for joining us. This is Circular Connections, and I'm Allison Mitchell, Vice President of Sustainability at Mobile reCell. Circularity Connections highlights conversations with individuals and companies taking steps to ensure a sustainable future. We highlight the collaboration, technology, and reshaped processes making that future possible in a circular economy. As a software company with a business model rooted in circularity, Mobile reCell is positioned at the intersection of technology and sustainability. And since joining the Mobile reCell team earlier this year, I've been developing a variety of tools to help IT leaders achieve greater sustainability in their day-to-day roles. In my role as the Vice President of Sustainability, I sit at the intersection of tech and sustainability, which is a fairly niche space to be in. And as you can imagine, I've been eager to connect with anyone who understands how the two converge, and just as importantly, how to engage with IT leaders on the topic. Today's guest was the first person that came to mind. So of course, I reached out to him right away for support, guidance, and connections. As you will hear in our discussion today, he's been an incredible resource to me. I am so thrilled to welcome Jeff Tunn of Tunn Enterprises, LLC to the show. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for reaching out, Allison. As you know, I love this topic, and you and I over the years have had some great conversations, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into the topic, I want to introduce you to our audience. Jeff, you are probably one of the most multidimensional people that I know because you go way beyond one of the most well-connected IT professionals. You're also a keynote speaker, an author, a blogger, a leadership explorer, a podcaster, mentor, convener of IT professionals, outdoor enthusiast, nonprofit board member, husband, father, grandfather, all the things. So I'm sure I've left something out in that very long list of hats that you wear. But I would really love to hear, especially as an IT professional, how you came to your passion for environmental sustainability.
Oh, that I think has been deeply rooted in me for, it seems like as long as I can remember. You know, I grew up being a Boy Scout, right? And so you learn about camping and leave no trace and those kinds of things. And as I grew into adulthood, I became an avid canoeist, loved throwing a river on a canoe and just paddling wherever the river takes you. And you develop this incredible love for the land on which you're walking or hiking or canoeing. And want to take care of it for future generations. And I think that I forget the exact quote, but it's a Native American quote about 7 generations and taking care of the planet for the earth, the Mother Earth, for 7 generations. And that just really struck home to me. So it's something that's always been there. And where it finally got married to my passion for technology really came at the time when you and I met. And I know we're going to talk about that, Allison. So that's really what brought those two worlds together for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and I know your role, your journey to becoming an IT professional was kind of atypical. And so I'd love to hear you explain that to the guests, how you became an IT professional.
So believe it or not, you know, what I wanted to do in high school was be a rock star. That's all I ever dreamed of. It's all I ever worked on. I played guitar. I wrote music. I even went to college because everybody has to go to college. I went to college to major in music and theory and composition. And very, very quickly, when I got to Indiana State, I learned a very important lesson. And that is you have to have talent. And I did not. So I was lost. I dropped out of college, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And that was right about the time this new thing called the Commodore 64 came out. And I bought one really almost on a lark, just because it was affordable. I bought it. I didn't really do much with computers in high school. Heck, we didn't even really have them in high school all that much. That shows you how old I am. But something magical happened when I got that Commodore 64. I fell in love with that machine, and I was able to tell that machine what to do and it would do it. And what I learned is that I had this knack for talking with people about a problem that they were having in their job and solving it through writing code. And to me, that's what I was going to do the rest of my life, was be that long-haired hippie COBOL programmer. I couldn't be the long-haired hippie guitar player, so I'll be the long-haired hippie COBOL programmer. And that started my career in technology 40 plus years ago. I mean, it's mind-blowing to say 40 years ago, but it's been an incredible career, and I've had some amazing opportunities throughout my career.
Well, speaking of amazing opportunities, let's tell folks how we met.
So Loth Property Group, I was working prior to Loth, I was working for Thompson Multimedia. Those here in the United States will know that as RCA Television, if you remember that brand from many years ago. And I knew one thing. I wanted to be the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. I wanted to run a technology department, to do it right in Jeff's version of right. And I had the opportunity to join Loth Property Group, a commercial real estate company that was on an incredible growth trajectory. And I became their first CIO, their vice president of IT. I met this person there that worked in the office and industrial team. And she was incredibly focused on sustainability, green building techniques, this thing that I'd never heard about called LEED, L-E-E-D. She was kind enough to share a paper that you wrote, I believe, for the University of Michigan. Do I remember that right?
Yeah.
That you had written about green building and green technology that goes into buildings. And it was like, holy cow, this is amazing, right? I can bring in my passion for sustainability and the planet and marry that with my passion for technology. So yeah, that's how we met. And I tell you, when you meet people in your career, there's just some people that you meet that just become this bond, right? And you and I, at least from my perspective, we bonded very, very quickly over that passion for green building. And we've stayed connected. Gosh, Allison, that was probably 2007, 2008, yeah. Something like that. Back then, I know I joined Loth in 2006. And we've stayed connected, sometimes loosely, but other times more connected throughout our careers because of that love for the planet. So that's kind of how we met.
Yeah. Those were good times. That was a very instrumental period of growth for my career as well, because I came into that role as, just an associate in office and industrial, and found the niche of being able to help the company really understand green building. And so that was the first opportunity for me to really flex that green muscle that I was trying to build all through my academic career. So that was a great experience. And I have really enjoyed staying connected to you. And I love that over all the years that and the different winding road that my career has taken, you've sort of been there as always, somebody I could reach out to and provide support to me. And I just love that this current role, is just squarely aligned, and you were the person. So it's so thrilling to sort of come full circle in this moment and have you on the podcast. So
it's very fun. And I feel the same way about you. I know over the years I've reached out to you as well for various initiatives, and you've always been willing to provide insight and guidance. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about your company, Ton Enterprises LLC, and how it came to be. Because I know you've had many iterations and worked in a variety of different roles, I mean, mainly focused in IT, but in different types of companies. Tell us a little bit more about Ton Enterprises.
Well, it really launched back in 2018, kind of quietly, I suppose. I wrote my first book. I wrote a book called Amplify Your Value, Strategies for Leading IT. It was really a playbook for chief information officers to use to marry the technology strategy with the strategy of the business. And what that started was a kind of a side gig of doing keynote presentations, breakout talks, workshops related to leadership in the technology space. And at the time I was working for Intervision Systems, and they were very supportive of that, right? Because they get some of the hype from me being a keynote speaker at this event or that event. They actually probably ended up buying more copies of my book than anybody. They would give them out to clients and things like that. But as we were coming towards the end of 2019, it was starting to butt heads. I was an executive with Intervision, and there's a huge time commitment with being an executive of a tech company, an executive of any company. And so I was flying all over the country for them, as well as flying all over the country doing my side gig. And it was interesting. My wife and I had just made the decision at the end of 19 that I was going to scale back my side business, that it was interfering with what was going on with Intervision. We were just going to backpedal a little bit. And then this thing called the global pandemic hit, right? And we, as an executive team at Intervision, really saw the impacts of that very quickly, because a large portion of our business was the resale of hardware, and the supply chain dried up like that, right? And we were getting lead times from suppliers of 18 months, 24 months. And so we knew we were going to have to do some restructuring. We were going to have to do restructuring in my department. I was head of product. And quite honestly, I reached out to my boss, Aaron Stone, great leader. And I said, hey, Aaron, if I'm in your shoes and we're looking at what's ahead of us, you have to be thinking about making a change at the executive level. And he said, well, yeah, I am. And I said, well, again, if I'm in your shoes, I'm thinking about Ton, or I'm thinking about one other person. And he says, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, let me make it easy for you. Let's talk and let's negotiate, because I want to go off and do my own thing. I'm ready. My business is there. It's growing. It's got potential, and I want to go do that. And his answer was, yeah, that'd be great, but can we be a client? And so they became my first client. In fact, you mentioned in my intro, the podcast, I host a podcast called Status Go, and it's Intervision's podcast, and it's aimed at technology professionals who want to break out of the status quo. So that was the launch of Ton Enterprises. And quite honestly, Allison, I thought when I left Intervision, what I would be doing would be virtual CIO services, because that's my background is chief information officer. And I've not done that at all. What I've ended up doing is leadership focused. I would say predominantly focused on the technology sector, but not exclusively. I do the podcast for Intervision, and I MC some of their marketing events. I have another client here locally, TechPoint, who, if you're local to Indiana, you probably know. And I do a leadership academy in partnership with them and Dr. Dennis Trinkle there at TechPoint. And so we have developed a program for kind of mid-level managers who want to spread their leadership wings in the technology space. And then another client of mine, FCCS Consulting out of Denver. For them, I do leadership development, experiential leadership development based on history. So my particular niche is I do a leadership development program based on the story of Lewis and Clark. And we bring leaders from all walks of life. They don't have to be technology, to different spots on the Lewis and Clark Trail, and we help them devise a new way forward in their leadership. So Ton Enterprises is kind of all over the board, but it's really the common thread in all the things that I do, those leadership development, building that next generation of leader.
That's fantastic. What a perfect scenario around, post-pandemic restructuring and you being ready to take off on your own and do your own thing. And now it sounds like Ton Enterprise really leverages the things that you're skilled at and the things you're passionate about. And I love that. That's a very wonderful place to be in your career. So congratulations to you. But it sounds like it all came full circle and worked out the way it was supposed to. So I love that story.
It did. It was an amazing ride, has been an amazing ride. And I love what I'm doing now. There's nothing more rewarding to me than seeing light bulb moments for emerging leaders or established leaders when you express an idea or give them a new way of thinking about things. I love that. It reminds me back in my days of writing code and handing code off to somebody, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I needed." And now I do that with leadership insights.
That's fantastic. You have worked in this variety of industries and with the variety of different types of clients. Have you found opportunities to bring sustainability and IT together? And what challenges or opportunities have presented themselves in any of those spaces?
I have, and it goes back, to our loft days. We became focused not only on the product of Loth, which was and is building buildings for people, developing real estate, and how do you do that with the least amount of impact on the planet that you can. And some of that is through technology, maybe not always information technology, but you talk about smart buildings and being able to control the environmentals within a building. And you and I could geek speak all day long about some of the technicalities behind that. But every other spot that I've been, I left Loth, and for a while I started my own green building consulting company. I don't know if you even remember that or knew that, but I was focused on how companies could operate their building in a greener way and drive profit, through the triple bottom line. And I did that for about a year, but I could dive into the sad story about that, but that's irrelevant. I then became CIO of Goodwill Industries. And, the Goodwill, given a large portion of their revenue is generated through their retail stores, which are driven by the donations of people that support Goodwill through donating their items that they no longer have use. What a great sustainability model, even though that's really not what the intent was. It was a great side effect to the Goodwill mission and the business model of Goodwill. And so when I joined them in IT, one of the things my wife and I'd been doing, again, going clear back to the Loft days, is sponsoring a river cleanup every year on the White River here in Indianapolis. We started that at Loth, and then when we left Loth, we kept that going for a number of years. But when I got to Goodwill, we stopped really with the river cleanup and shifted to I formed a committee, or was instrumental in forming a committee at Goodwill on sustainability. We didn't really have that when I joined there. They'd had kind of a green team a year or so before I joined that had kind of fizzled out. So we reinvigorated that. And we started neighborhood cleanups. And Goodwill's headquarters here in Indianapolis is downtown on the near west side. And so we formed a group of employees that would go out and pick up trash, clean up the neighborhood, enlisted several of the other businesses in the area to do that. So while that's not really marrying technology at that point, it was bringing people together that cared and creating those programs. From a technology perspective, it seems like for the most part, when you talk about green IT, you talk about energy and energy savings, right? And that's a huge part of it. And being able to make sure that your desktops and your laptops have the right sleep settings so that you're not using a bunch of power overnight and things. And we've come a long way from, the early days of that, when people are like, well, why the heck would you even want to do that? To it's now built into just about every desktop and laptop that you have, and your monitors shut off and all those kinds of things. That's all because of those sustainability movements. But it got broader than that, right? It became, let's look at the data center and the power that the data center is consuming and the water that a data center is consuming. Most people don't realize data centers, a lot of them are water cooled. And so you're using a lot of water. And so again, kind of going back in the early days, every company had a data center. And they had huge cooling requirements. I can remember even at Goodwill, we called it a data center, but it was really a room in our headquarters. And we had a dedicated HVAC system, air conditioner, that just ran constantly and just was an energy suck, right, to cool that data center. So you start to look at those and like, how can we change our impact? And some of it is, I'll use air quotes and say self-serving, because you're trying to save money on energy. You're trying to save money on water costs and other costs associated with it. But it's really about how can we be better stewards of the resources that we've been given. And now, that green IT has continued to evolve. When I left Goodwill, I joined an organization by the name of Blue Lock. We did disaster recovery as a service, infrastructure as a service, so cloud. And cloud, although cloud data centers consume a lot of power and a lot of water, and they give off a lot of greenhouse gases in general, it's a far smaller impact than if every company still had their own data centers, right? So just going to the cloud helps a little bit. But we partnered with a data center out of Las Vegas, the Switch data center. For all you geeks, IT geeks that are listening, if you're ever in Vegas for a conference, call me and I'll arrange for a tour of the Switch data center. You will be blown away by its size and by its sustainability initiatives. They are amazing. The founder, I want to say his name is Rob Roy. Rob Roy has dozens of patents for data center operation, and most of them are related to sustainability. And so you can we're going to talk in a minute, I know, about sustainability targets. You can hit a lot of your green IT sustainability targets by leveraging somebody like a Switch data center who's already doing that. And so put a pitch in for them and a pitch in for Intervision, because they still use, Intervision was the company that acquired Blue Lock. They still use the Switch data center in addition to AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So,
wow, that's a really interesting story. I know that the cloud computing has been pretty transformative for IT operations, but it's really great to hear about the sort of that centralization of data processing can actually be more sustainable, because if assuming you choose the right, partner that's doing things sustainably, can make a big difference. And I will take you up on that, because I think I've got plans to head to Vegas in early 2024.
you let me know, and I will make sure you get it. You will geek out over it, Allison. It is very, very cool.
That's awesome. I look forward to that. A cloud computing hub in the middle of the desert that operates sustainability. That's something I've got to see.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, one of the things that in my role, I try to bring together the chief sustainability officer and the chief technology or chief information officer of an organization. Have you had the opportunity to collaborate with sustainability leaders at companies, whether you were consulting or in when you were kind of embedded in the organization as a collaborative, in a collaborative way? Have you had that opportunity yet?
I saw that question as we were preparing for our conversation today, Allison, and I don't think, in thinking back on the stops since Loth, because you were basically the chief sustainability officer at Loth. You didn't have that title, but you served that role, right? When I got to Goodwill, they did not have that role. They had the previous chair of the Green Committee. And so I worked very closely. I think, as I recall, it was Lee Chai Chang was that person. And so Lee and I partnered together to do things. He actually worked in the IT department and had a passion for that as well. I think he works for Microsoft now. And then, when I got to Blue Lock and Intervision, we didn't really have anybody that was focused on that. It was more pockets of employees that cared about those kinds of initiatives and things. And so we would get together and drive that. Since launching Ton Enterprises, I've not encountered somebody in that role. And that's probably more a function of the size of organization that I typically work with. You typically find those roles in larger organizations. Smaller organizations are more committee driven. So I've worked with the committees about those types of initiatives because I find there's a lot of benefit to getting the sustainability groups together, whether it's a department, whether it's a team. It's great team building. Go out on a river cleanup with people. You get to know them really well as you're sloshing through the river in the mud, or do a trash pickup with people. And I know sustainability is much broader than that, but it really starts to connect you. At Goodwill, we had a great partnership with Dell, the computer company, because Goodwill would receive a lot of electronics, right? And some of them were usable, maybe, some of them not. But we partnered with Dell for a recycle initiative on computer equipment. I know we're going to talk more about that when we talk about mobile reCell. So I'd say it was more taking advantage of like-minded souls, if you will, to really push those initiatives. But now what we're seeing a push from the SEC to include that in sustainability goals in your ESG reporting. You know, Gartner this year predicted that by 2025, 50% of the CIOs will have sustainability targets for their technology department. And so I almost feel like we're finally getting mainstream, Allison. We've been pushing this for 15 years, and we're finally getting traction. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, well, I loved your comment that you were basically the chief sustainability officer at Loft, because ironically, I wrote a job description and tried to actually create that role, and it got shot down. But I still did all the things on that list that I said. So that's funny. I have literally been. This role at Mobile reCell as the VP of sustainability is kind of the role I've been trying to get my whole career. So it feels like, I'm in the right spot. But also it's a new role. It's a new role, not only for Mobile reCell, but for lots of companies. In fact, we're a pretty small organization to have a, VP of sustainability. But there are so many, if you look on, websites and job posting websites in particular, or even just LinkedIn, there are so many postings for a chief sustainability officer or an equivalent right now, because it's a huge area of growth for lots of companies. And so I'm kind of not surprised to hear you say you haven't worked with somebody with that title, because it's not been a very common title except at those largest companies.
That's right.
Which is really what motivated me. When we talked the first time, I said, I will be coming back to you, because I was brand new into the role. I said, I will be coming back to you because part of my job is to develop resources to bring the chief sustainability officer and the CIO together. And so I did come back to you, and you helped me, gather some resources to put together the Quick Start Guide to Sustainability in IT, which is, recently launched on the Mobile reCell website. But for folks who haven't had a chance to review that yet, I'm going to kind of briefly share what that resource is and where you can find it on the Mobile reCell website. So if you go to the Mobile reCell website, mobilerecell.com, you can find a link to get to the Quick Start Guide to Sustainability in IT right here on the homepage. So you just click here, and it will take you to this page where you just fill out some really brief information, and then it will give you the download to view it. So we'll just talk really briefly about what that document covers. And Jeff, you were so instrumental in helping me put this together. It's essentially a 15-page document, and it starts very basic to help IT leaders understand and kind of lay the groundwork for what is sustainability and the circular economy as well. So in the past, the very popular model for describing sustainability was this Venn diagram of overlap, with sustainability in the middle. But really, the evolution of that has really been to think about this growth outward and this nesting of sustainability. So then the document goes into the circular economy, and really how to understand that is understanding first the linear economy, the recycling economy, and sort of contextualizing the evolution to a circular economy, which is a concept that's been around for a very long time. Reduce, reuse, recycle in that order, but it really just expands upon the different flows of nutrients and the prioritization of how to prevent waste and design away from waste altogether. The document goes into talking about the importance of sustainability for businesses. And this section is really to help the sustainability person in the organization or the technology person in get others on board to understand why we're talking about this, why this is important for our business. And then where sustainability and information technology really overlap, and so how it applies to IT and how it shows up in the day-to-day operations for an IT leader role. And Jeff, as you mentioned, a lot of it, we start off talking about energy and data centers because that is really the first place that you can go to have a pretty big impact, whether you move to the cloud if you haven't already, or think about, who is your cloud data service provider. And then the power that is being consumed by those devices, the source of power, and that'll depend on where you're located or where your data provider is located in terms of the mix of energy sources that they have access to, and then transportation and logistics of those assets from point A to point B and back again. So those are just places where energy shows up. And then obviously in the material space, there's has to do with the actual equipment and devices that are chosen. Rating systems help you navigate that tremendously. And then reuse or recycling of mobile devices and other IT assets, which is really, that's where Mobile reCell is a strong partner in that process. But it really goes beyond that, because it's, when you can protect and maintain the integrity and the useful life of those, that goes into what kind of cases, what kind of other peripherals that you provide to your employees to sort of prolong the life of span of those devices. And then, something this probably comes from my background in materials and circular economy. It's the packaging, right? People don't often think they can look right past packaging, but there's materials that are involved in packaging, and you can make better choices. Those are on quite a spectrum. And then, Jeff, you mentioned the water consumption, and a lot of that is related to cooling in data centers, but also in the manufacturing and the transportation and the extraction process of those materials. So water and energy really show up in all steps throughout the process. Yes. So as much as you can achieve some transparency into what is being consumed at all those different phases, you have the opportunity to improve that. And then the last part of the document really focuses on what you need to do as a leader to achieve greater sustainability in IT operations, asking the right questions, getting that leadership buy-in on taking steps, and then implementing, because this sort of takes you through a decision process or an overview of where to start, who to ask questions of, and how to tackle from beginning to end. And really, it never ends. I mean, it's a once you get a plan and once you get an assessment of where you are today, identify the opportunities where you can make major progress and start tackling those. Once you get those, then you just go down the list and continue, and then constantly reassess and improve. And that's really where IT is an advantage into itself, because IT is so geared to gathering data, analyzing data, and making decisions based on data. And so sustainability is a really great way to apply that. And then kind of previewing, as we know, the SEC is coming out with a ruling soon around ESG reporting and scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And so it's really helpful for sustainability leaders and to be able to relate these changes that are coming to all leaders within the organization and how it might impact them. And IT is, of course, no different. They need to understand where their business shows up in, within supply chain of other organizations, upstream, downstream, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So a lot of IT is going to be in scope 3 emissions, but it's helpful to understand where they sit and be prepared for those reporting requirements as they come. And then conclusion of the document really talks about how mobile reCell helps company achieve sustainability goals. And our platform has sustainability baked into it and helps companies achieve greater sustainability with transparency in all throughout the process, and provides detailed environmental impact data in the dashboard that can be easily just plugged right into your annual sustainability reporting, so that you can capture the benefit of working with mobile reCell to improve your IT asset disposition recovery rates and kind of long-term impacts. Then at the very end, there's additional resources for sustainability leaders and IT professionals to learn more about these different organizations and resources that are out there around circular economy, sustainability, and ESG. So that's just kind of an overview of the document. Jeff, is there anything that has come up for you in sustainability or in your different roles that you saw in that document that made you think of an opportunity or an occasion where those topics were applied?
First of all, let me say I love that quick start guide, and you're giving me way too much credit because you did the heavy lifting on that. I think I might have said tweak this word or that word. You did it from there. So I appreciate you giving me credit, but you did all the work. I think it's a fabulous quick start guide, especially for CIOs, IT leaders who may not have really thought about these concepts before. And I loved the comparison of the Venn diagram versus the nested circle, because I think that tells a great story. What I found on there, and I actually had to click through to see what it was data sobriety as a concept, technology sobriety. And it's like, well, what is that? Which is really, to me, I'll summarize that, it's just thinking about, hey, let's automate this, but then taking it beyond that and saying, but at what cost? How is this going to do that? How is us spending time automating this and then digitizing it? How's it going to impact sustainability going forward, and bringing that mindset? And I think the other thing that jumped out at me was that 20% and 20% of smartphones actually get recycled. They're sitting in closets, even in the corporate enterprise level. They're sitting in closets, or they're sitting in employees' desks, or there might be in employees' homes. And just knowing some of that information can help you behave differently. And I think people will find it eye-opening as they read the Quick Start Guide, and they're going to come up with, as they're reading it, they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I need to pay attention to that," or "Yeah, I need to pay attention to that." I think it'll be great.
Yeah, this is something I learned when I started at Mobile reCell, was that the average corporate device recovery rate is 30%. I don't know if that was the statistic you were referring to.
That might have been it. Yeah.
Yep. And when I tell people, that are not in the tech space, or what I do for a living and the company I work for, and I explain to them, companies do a really great job of getting their mobile assets out to their employees, but they do a pretty terrible job of getting them back. And that's where mobile reCell comes in. And then, they ponder that for a minute, and then they're like, I have a device from my old employer that's sitting at a desk at my home, or, it's like a toy that my kids play with. Like, it hasn't been charged in years, but it's just like, a toy that they will click around on. And so it's really interesting, the reactions we get around that. But there's just so much risk of data security in that, and increasingly that is a major concern for companies. And so and now with ESG reporting and transparency only increasing, or demands for transparency increasing, especially when you look to investors, Mobile reCell really helps deliver on that solution, really across the board in a very simplified way. So it's a lot of fun to see people kind of that moment where they realize what Mobile reCell does, and like, oh yeah, that's probably a really big problem. Like, yes, it is a really big problem, because those devices going rogue is one thing in dust drawers, but then becoming rogue in the environment and having those materials, one, not captured for best use, or the usable life left in the device not being captured. But then just with the environmental havoc they can wreak if they are, they end up in a landfill or something. So it's a huge opportunity. Well, Jeff, is there anything in closing you want to add? Is there advice or that you would give an IT leader that's maybe new into this space, or hasn't delved into sustainability in their current role or in past roles?
I love the way the action section of the sustainability guide started. And the first one, I think, was ask questions, right? Because that's a great, IT professionals are naturally curious. It's what leads us into technology to begin with. So ask questions. The other thing that I would say is, when it comes to sustainability, you, as the leader of technology for an organization, you have to look at it through two different lenses. You have to look at it about IT and green technology. What's your consumption and things in your data center and your cloud usage and all those things. But you also have to look at it from your business perspective and where you can help your business. Because yes, you're going to have, especially if you're a publicly traded company, you're going to have reporting requirements at some point, and you're going to have to help your business partners identify where they can gather that information so that it can be reported on. And then I would say, as a third thing, just keep those things front and center as you're making decisions. Add that into your decision matrix of what's the impact on our sustainability initiatives of this or that, and use that as part of your criteria.
That's excellent advice. Well, thank you again, Jeff, for joining Circularity Connections today. You were the obvious first choice for this topic, and I'm so glad that you joined us today to talk about this and to go over the Quick Start Guide. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And before we go, I want to encourage our audience to connect with Jeff on LinkedIn and visit his website, jeffreystunn.com. And there you'll find his contact information so you can reach out to him directly. And as I mentioned earlier, Jeff, you are a podcaster. So Can you tell me a little bit about your podcast?
Absolutely. So Status Go is a podcast that is published by Intervision Systems. It's targeted at the technology professional who wants to break out of the status quo. They want to drive change. So we cover a wide variety of topics. Sometimes we talk tech, but sometimes we talk leadership. We've even had a recent one, Status Go Goes Green, where we talk sustainability. But you can see there on the screen that Allison is sharing, wide variety of topics. And even if you're not a technology professional, if you have interest in technology or interest in leadership, there's a lot in here that could be meaningful to you as well. One of my favorite, you're just scrolling by there, I interviewed ChatGPT on the podcast there on the lower right. And because ChatGPT is text-based artificial intelligence, I took its answers and fed it through a text-to-speech algorithm. And the voice that I chose was might be very familiar if you've listened to any rap music or watched a beer commercial or a Martha Stewart fan. It's our buddy Snoop Dogg. So it's kind of entertaining to talk about AI with Snoop Dogg. So
That's awesome. I love that. Of all the voices you could have chosen, I have to applaud that choice. That's a great one.
it was pretty good.
That's great. Well, as a closing thought, I want to just encourage our listeners to be curious about the opportunities for circularity, whether it's at home or you're wondering about the products you buy and the waste created, or at work as it relates to mobile devices and IT equipment that's used by you and your other employees. Whenever you see a linear process of the take, make, waste model, maybe challenge the status quo, to borrow a phrase from Jeff here. And of throwing those things away and recycling things that still have usable life, or worse, letting them go rogue. The circular economy is really, it's open source, right? And it's achieved by everyday people disrupting these linear processes that they see in everyday life and designing waste out of the system. So you may be the next great entrepreneur of the circular economy just by observing the world around you. And Mobile reCell really supports your own company's sustainability initiatives by helping you improve the process of recapturing those mobile devices and used IT equipment like laptops, smartphones, and tablets. We provide tools, resources, expertise, and experience to help you embed circularity into your IT operations. For more on Mobile reCell and to listen to other episodes of Circularity Connections, please visit mobilerecell.com. Thank you again for listening, and have a circular day.